Darth Vader is one of the most formidable Sith Lords in the history of the galaxy, and his reputation for hunting down and slaughtering Jedi Knights is largely unrivaled. As perhaps the most fearsome Jedi butcher of his era, there were very few individuals who were ever able to survive an encounter with the Dark Lord of the Sith, let alone do any considerable damage to the tyrant whatsoever. Despite this though, Vader was utterly crippled by his duel against Obi-Wan Kenobi in Revenge of the Sith on Mustafar. Left to die on the lava banks, he was confined to a life support suit which caused him immeasurable agony for the duration of his existence, and he had very little mobility or maneuverability while within his combat gear. So this raises an important question. How was Vader able to overpower so many talented Jedi Knights? What made Vader so special that he could essentially march his way through virtually any opponent? Well, today, students of the Force, we will explore exactly why Vader was such a dangerous combatant, and explore why his lightsaber form was directly tooled to fight Jedi, as well as why Darth Vader may just be the greatest fundamental lightsaber duelist in the entirety of Star Wars lore. The four primary factors are of course Vader's chosen lightsaber style, his connection with the dark side, an ancient Sith practice known and employed by only a select few individuals called Dun Mak, and surprisingly, the inexperience of most Jedi that he faced. Let's begin with Vader's chosen lightsaber form. As a Jedi Knight, Anakin Skywalker specialized in Form 5 Djem. Djem is the dueling variant of Form 5 lightsaber combat that Anakin utilized throughout the duration of the Clone Wars and had become very familiar with over the course of several long years. Originally, Anakin Skywalker actually specialized in Form 4, but later made the transition to Form 5 and its dueling-centric variant. Djem focused on ending a fight before it could ever truly be allowed to begin. This was done by overpowering, disorienting, and defeating an opponent as quickly as possible. While similarities can be found in Ataru, otherwise known as Form 4, Ataru was far more acrobatic than Djem was. Instead, Djem truly highlighted Anakin Skywalker's greatness, as it focused on marching through obstacles with brute force, as Anakin was incredibly physically strong, which offered in turn Vader a previous mastery of the prior experience using the form. Vader being physically stronger than even Anakin, it was also applicable to his situation after being crippled by Obi-Wan. When Vader was confined to his suit, he lost much of his mobility, even losing the ability to lift his arms from above his head. For an Ataru user, this would nullify most of their training and efficiency in duels, as they would need to be flexible and mobile to truly reach the fullest extent of their capabilities. Djem on the other hand, was a much more streamlined approach and didn't require much maneuverability at all, making it a prime choice for Vader given his circumstances. Had Anakin Skywalker actually stuck with Ataru, we may have seen a far less powerful and skilled Vader. Djem allowed Vader to keep most of his movements short and controlled, yet backed with his incredible strength and knowledge of the form. When combined with his prowess in the dark side and the fullest extent of his force potential, however, Djem became much more dangerous than ever under a trained Jedi. As Vader of course was no Jedi, Vader was a Sith. While Jedi were allowed to use forceful maneuvers, they were discouraged from ever tapping into their aggression and letting their anger drive a combat scenario, lest they run the risk of falling to temptation and turning to the dark side. If a Jedi dug into their own latent aggression, then the dark side became an increasingly dangerous presence for a Jedi who didn't have control over their emotions, as a duel surprisingly can actually lead to a Jedi embracing the dark side. Once on the dark side, however, such as Vader, Sith Lords were able to exert all of their hatred, their frustration, and their rage into a combat scenario, thus allowing Vader to repurpose his former Djem style, only now fully utilizing the dark side of the Force and allowing him to push himself further than he ever could as a Jedi. The form and techniques of Form 5 paired very nicely with Vader's newfound ability to use his anger and his rage against former Knights of the Jedi Order, and it also allowed him to fight with his limited range of motion, thus offering Vader the proper technique to channel his anger and compensate for his physical limitations. But what made Vader truly great and exceptional was not that he truly specialized and brought Djem to its absolute limit, but that he used other forms to bring Djem past its limits. Darth Vader was also a known practitioner of Surisu, as he did not specifically specialize in Djem, but rather the greatness of Vader was that he combined several lightsaber forms into a hybridized style, a style that allowed him to mount an incredibly unbearable offensive front, and yet nearly instantaneously switch into a defense that was impenetrable. Inspired by the likes of his defeat at the hands of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Vader learned Surisu extremely well, studying the form extensively and perfecting Surisu to the point where it could seamlessly protect all of the cybernetics that Darth Vader required to continue to live. Most importantly, his life support system. Beyond Vader's incredible defense, though, was his second greatest teacher over the course of the Clone Wars, Count Dooku. As it has been stated before that besides Obi-Wan, it was Dooku that taught Anakin Skywalker, and in turn, Darth Vader, the most about combat over the course of the Clone Wars. This is where Form 2 Makashi comes into play. Djem has been described as wild and uncontrolled, but having learned directly from the likes of Dooku, Darth Vader was able to refine it. No movement was wasted, and Vader too used the finesse of a fencer similar to his greatest opponent at the time, Dooku. It were these three key styles of Form 5 Djem, 3 Surisu, and 2 Makashi that formed the perfect hybridized lightsaber form. Vader used his greatest defeats over his life and created a form that would butcher dozens of Jedi. But even this is not the end of Vader's greatness in a lightsaber duel, as again, he used the technique known as Duan Mach. He paired his lightsaber skills with this ability, using the two in tandem. Duan Mach was a method that the ancient Sith designed to overwhelm an opponent with a barrage of strikes and blows within a very few brief seconds of time. This would cause even a seasoned knight to hesitate despite all their training, and this moment of hesitation was crucial in ensuring the duel most often led to the downfall of each and every Jedi despite their skill level. Duan Mach, though, was far more than physical, as it allowed Vader to penetrate the Jedi's mind, taunt them verbally, and far more. Once Vader caused a Jedi to second guess and doubt their defenses and even their own skill in the Force, they were immediately thrust into the defense, not only physically but within their very minds, as it was running on overdrive in order to compensate for the overwhelming experience of the Dark Lord. This automatically shifted a fight into Vader's favor, as he was able to dictate the course of the fight and the nature of who was on the offense and who was on the defense and when. The ancient Sith and Vader, long after them, trained themselves to terrify an opponent to the extent of making them forget their training completely. And all it took was one opening or moment of weakness to deliver the killing blow. Vader's imposing presence, demeanor, and stature already did most of the job for him, terrifying an opponent to the degree of making them hesitate and clouding their mind, numbing their instincts in the Force, and finally, overpowering them effortlessly. Many of the Jedi that perished at the hands of Vader were only conquered due to a brief moment of weakness and hesitation caused by his absolutely terrifying presence in the Force and demeanor combined with his unrivaled aggression. It's also important to note that very few Jedi ever had encountered another Force user in blade-to-blade combat, which Dooku cited as a major weakness from the Jedi Order at the time. The Jedi simply had lost the ability to duel one another, as there were far less Sith and Darksiders in the galaxy. Throughout the era of the Clone Wars, there were only a few ever prominent lightsaber wielders who ever opposed the Jedi, and many of them primarily dueled members of the Jedi Council. Dooku and Grievous were only on the most prominent battlefields, and Maul, Ventress, and Savage Opress remained mostly confined to the criminal underworld. While Ventress was sent on more missions than most, she was still only one individual in comparison to the tens of thousands of Jedi Knights. Therefore, most survivors of Order 66 had never even encountered a formal lightsaber duel before, let alone with the likes of Lord Vader. Altogether, these primary traits culminated in one of the most imposing, if not the single most imposing and formidable Jedi executioner in the history of the Star Wars galaxy, a figure who was single-handedly responsible for the deaths of dozens of Jedi, all different skill levels. They all fell to Lord Vader. But anyway, friends and students of the Force, what are your thoughts on Darth Vader, Lord of the Sith, and his chosen lightsaber form, as well as his preferred method in hunting and executing Jedi? As always, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi content on the channel, and may the Force be with you.